Shabbat Shalom. I'm touched by all of you who have come this morning to walk with me through Poland. So many people ran from their homes to save themselves from the destruction of Hitler. My mother, Anna Geyer, was one of the lucky ones. She left Poland with my sister Evelyn on one of the last boats out, leaving behind her father, 2 sisters, and a tragedy. Her oldest child, my older brother, died in a freak accident on the school playground. Times were already getting bad, and the hospital would not release my brother's body, so my mother dressed him late at night and carried her dead child home. He was 7 years old, and my sister remembers watching through the window as the horse-drawn carriage carried his small body down the street past their house to the cemetery, with the 2 aunts holding our mother and helping her walk behind. Her screams still vivid in my sister's mind today. No time for a gravestone, only a promise from her father, but the boat was leaving. I was born in 1948. My older brother and I would have been 18 years apart. When my parents made it to America, my mother opened her home to all the young people who survived. So many came to Detroit. At the age of 5, listening to their tales like a fly on the wall, tales of camps and death and horrible conditions, the name Hitler and the numbers tattooed on their arms filled my dreams and turned them into nightmares. Gombin, my mother's hometown, had a society, a club in Detroit. Many of the families who came from Gombin and some survivors would get together and have meetings, many at our dining room table. Years later, my brother Bernie, who is 6 years older than me, became very interested in the Gombiner Society. He wanted to go there, see the town, see where we came from. After all, our mother told wonderful stories about life in Gombin, the beautiful synagogue, cooking Shabbat dinner at the bakery, spending time in the Wald, the forest. But Mama said no, there's nothing left there. The Poles could have helped. No Jews left in Gombin. Gedenk, she said, a hard Jewish word to translate. Maybe think about it, maybe remember. But when Mama said it, you listened. Promise me, Marilyn, you won't go. I promise, Mama. But Bernie went with a group of the Gombiner Society, all looking for their roots. On the bus, the guide explained that the Nazis had taken the headstones from the cemetery and used them for curbs and roads, and that they were working on putting the memorial back together with all the headstones. They had found most of them, but they had one that was not identified. It was missing the last name, and it read, "Here lies lieber Kind, loving child, Pinchas, 7 years old." My brother jumped up shouting, "That's my brother." Our grandfather must have done this after my mother and sister left. She never saw the headstone and never knew. My son Evan here today is named for Pinchas. I would never go there, never go to this terrible place called Poland. I promised her, my mother, and myself. But on May 15th, I left with Michael, and I met my brother Bernie and my sister Jane in Warsaw. And together we went to Gombin. I walked the streets my mother traveled, to the bakery where she cooked her meals, the synagogue that is now a drugstore, and the cemetery where my brother's headstone is back where it belongs. And I cried. There's nothing left of the Jewish people but plaques and memorials and headstones. And I cried. We had lunch at the home of a Polish family that Bernie has made friends with. Their sons care for the cemetery. One son said to me, as he began studying about the Holocaust and found that there had been Jews in Gombin, he couldn't believe it. Jews in Gombin, he said? No. My mother's words rang in my ears. But this young man was my brother's friend and helped take care of the cemetery where my dead brother was buried. Yet his mother spoke no English and must have heard stories of the Jews, but never shared them with her sons. Confusion clouded my vision, and as I used tears to try to wash them away. We had lunch at her table. At the table, I closed my eyes, and sitting there, I would tell you, I was eating my mama's chicken soup. All the food was mama's cooking, but the cooking was Polish. Or was the Polish cooking a little Yiddish? All the restaurants served food like I ate in my mother's kitchen. Who knew she could have had a restaurant in Hamtramck? I grew up speaking Yiddish, but many of the words were actually Polish. My mother was always washing the podolka, the floor, drying dishes with the shterka, the dish towel, heating water in the chajnik, the tea kettle, and always telling me to stay out of the blota, the mud. This time, I laughed. Warsaw was beautiful. No ghetto, no Jews. The Warsaw ghetto had new big buildings and beautiful outdoor cafes. We ate borscht and had kreplach, but again, I cried. My mother always told me in her time Warsaw had a big mall. Like Somerset, I would ask her. She would laugh. In Warsaw, there's a museum that had an entire section about Gombin. The director is a descendant of Gombin. My grandfather is in that museum. Pictures of the town, a scale model of the synagogue. Our last stop was at a mass grave in Cholmo. I didn't want to keep walking. My brother, he took me by the hand and he said we must. The mass graves were as big as Olympic-sized swimming pools, and on one wall was a picture of my grandfather and my aunts. My brother said he thinks they are here. We held hands and we said Kaddish, and I cried. It was a trip I was glad I took, walking in her footsteps, feeling her pain, understanding her life. I loved her with a love that had no boundaries. And Gedenk now has new meaning. Gedenk, think about it, remember, but never, never forget.